to Narayana IAS Academy. This is Sureka Bhaskar presenting to you the daily news analysis. So for today's discussion, we've picked up a number of articles from The Hindu and the Indian Express, which are both important and relevant for the UPSC CSE examination. Now let us have a look at the topics one by one. The first article for the day has been picked up from page number 14 of The Hindu. Robotic Mules Join Army, Drones and High Altitude Tents under evaluation. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the increasing application of robotics in the modern warfare, and also we'll be discussing about its advantages, the concerns and applications, and finally we'll be discussing the dimension of India's progress in the military robotics. The second article for the day has been picked up from page number 10 of The Hindu, How to Enable Transit-Oriented Development. So as the title suggests, we will be understanding and discussing the concept of TOD, that is nothing but transit-oriented development, and also we will analyze how integrating the job centers with that of public transit will actually enhance and improve the urban mobility, the economic growth, as well as the quality and standard of life. Moving on, the third article has been picked up from page number 12 of the Indian Express, How Supreme Court Strengthened the Child Pornography Law. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the recent ruling of the Supreme Court that has actually resulted in the strengthening of child pornography law, expanding the interpretation of offences under the POCSO Act. The fourth article has been picked up from page number 8 of The Hindu, Weighing in on business as usual with China. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about the relations and the ties that India and China actually share, and also we'll be discussing the concerns with respect to that of the economic ties, the border issues, as well as the potential impact of allowing increased FDI of China in India. The last article that has been taken up for discussion today has been taken from page number 4 of The Hindu, Secularism, a European concept introduced during emergency. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about this particular concept of secularism, how it actually emerged, how it got introduced into the constitution, how it was interpreted, and so on. And finally, we will be comparing and contrasting Indian secularism with that of the rest of the world. And towards the end of the session, we will be solving few MCQs as well as the mains practice questions. And now let us get into the discussion. The first article that we've actually picked up for discussion today is Robotic Mules Join the Army and Drones High Altitude Tents under evaluation. So whatever we are going to discuss in this particular topic or this particular analysis is that we are going to discuss about the increasing prevalence of robotics in modern warfare. So here we'll be discussing about robotics in warfare, what is modern warfare, as well as where and how India has actually progressed in military robotics. And this particular topic becomes important for the mains examination under GS paper 3, security challenges and their management, technology, developments and their applications. Okay, so robotics, cyber warfare in itself is actually very important, and how India is actually progressing towards modernization is even more important for your mains examination. Now moving forward, there has been a previous year question asked in the 2013 mains examination with respect to that of cyber warfare. So this particular topic becomes very, very important for our discussion. Okay. Now let us understand what this particular article is talking about. So the Indian Army has procured and inducted robotic mules. So we'll actually be looking into what are these mules in order to enhance its capabilities and modernize its operations. Okay. So here, let us actually understand what are these mules that the Indian Army has actually inducted. Okay, so they actually stand for multi-utility legged equipment that are actually designed to carry out loads and perform surveillance in challenging terrains. Okay, so these are the equipments that are used for carrying out the security operations in very, very difficult terrains. The Indian Army's induction of robotic mules is a part of its broader strategy in order to incorporate artificial intelligence and robotics into its operations, more like the West. Okay. However, the developed countries are actually progressing towards it. Now, India has started taking strides in it. The goal is to improve the operational efficiency, enhance the safety of its personnel, and also maintain a technological edge in modern warfare. So if you look at this particular image, this is what is the mule that we were actually talking about, multi-utility legged equipment, which is used for performing security operations in very, very difficult terrain. Now moving forward, let us actually understand introduction to robotics in warfare. For that, we need to understand what is robotics, okay? It is nothing but it is a multidisciplinary field that involves both engineering as well as computer science, and it focuses on creation, design, production and the operation of automated machines which are capable of performing specific tasks with minimal or no human intervention. Basically is nothing but you use fields of engineering such as the computer science engineering and robotic engineering in order to manufacture and design a machine where it can actually function without the human intervention in order to carry out operations in very difficult terrains or for security purposes, etc. In the context of modern warfare, the robotics has revolutionized the battlefield, of course, because we are not focusing, our primary focus is now not on the conventional arms that we use, rather than we are actually trying to inculcate the use of robotics and artificial intelligence in order to modernize our warfare. This actually transforms the nature of combat operations. As the warfare evolves, the role of robotics is expanding to encompass the roles that reduce the risk to human soldiers, offering enhanced capabilities in decision making as well as precision targeting. Now, nations like the United States, China as well as Russia are investing heavily in the robotic technologies for their defense sectors. Okay. Now let us understand what are all the various applications, the advantages and the concerns associated with robotics in warfare. And finally, we will actually move towards understanding what has been India's progress in the military robotics. Okay, so here looking at the various applications of robotics in warfare, first one, its application in surveillance and the reconnaissance. Okay, so here the unmanned aerial vehicles as well as drones provide real-time intelligence as well as reconnaissance capabilities. Example, if you see, US military drones like the Predator as well as the Reaper monitor the movement of the enemies. Next one, explosive ordnance disposal, that is EOD. Here the robots actually detect as well as neutralize the explosives. Examples actually include the Talon robot, which is actually used for the bomb disposal operations in the areas of conflicts, that is the conflict zone. Next is combating the support. Here, the ground robots assist in combat operations. This actually offers the offensive as well as defensive support. Here, the example is Russia's Uran 9 and US PackBot. These actually help navigate difficult terrains also as well as fire weapons. So, anything that you actually say, any subheading has to be substantiated with an example in order to make the examiner understand that you have a strong hold of the topic. So, it's better that you actually cram up these examples so that whenever modern warfare or modernization of warfare and what has been India's performance, mention its applications, if all these are being asked, it is better that you actually give these examples. Next application includes medical evacuation as well as assistance. Here, the robots help transport injured soldiers, that is whichever soldiers are injured, the robots help in their transportation from the combat zones to the medical fields. Example is the Bloodhound robot. This is designed to evacuate the wounded soldiers. Next one, in logistics and transportation. Here, the UGVs such as the unmanned aerial vehicles, we have the unmanned ground vehicles also. These transport supplies as well as equipment across the tough terrains. Example is the mule vehicle that we actually saw. It aids in carrying the equipment, reducing the burden on the soldiers. Now moving forward, after looking at the applications, it's important for us to see the advantages. First one, there is reduced risk to the human life. That is one of the most significant advantage, is that it helps in the reduction of human casualties. For example, use of Talon by the USA we saw in the conflict zones. Okay, that is conflict zones. They are employed or deployed in Iraq as well as Afghanistan. This has significantly reduced the risk of soldiers encountering the explosive devices. Next one is enhanced precision as well as accuracy. Here, robots equipped with artificial intelligence and sensors provide unparalleled precision in combat. Example, drones like MQ-9 Reaper used by US military can actually exactly pinpoint the airstrikes, reducing the collateral damage and civilian casualties. Next is efficiency of cost. That is, while the initial cost of developing this can actually be high, they offer long-term cost benefits by reducing the need for the human soldiers, the medical evacuations as well as prolonged training. The example includes the PAC bot, which is used for reconnaissance and the bomb disposal. This can be reused across multiple missions and also enhance the cost savings. Next is capability to operate in hostile environments. We actually see where it is difficult for the soldiers to reach, the robots can actually reach. Example, the robots were used to inspect the damaged Fukushima nuclear plant in Japan after the 2011 disaster, where the radiation levels were too high for the humans. Next is the endurance of this robotics as well as the speed of the robots. The robots do not require rest unlike the human soldiers because they do not experience any kind of fatigue, damage, wound, etc. Example, autonomous drones like the US Global Hawk. This can actually fly over even for 24 hours, providing uninterrupted surveillance over vast areas. However, looking at the applications, we saw that robotics is extremely useful in modern warfare. Looking at the advantages, we actually saw how, we can actually use robotics because it does not undergo any kind of fatigue or tension. Now, it is important for us to see the other side of the coin. What are the concerns associated with robotics in warfare? First is the ethical concerns. Here, the robots cannot make moral decisions, of course, because morally thinking and having a common sense is a trait that human beings actually have. So, robots cannot make moral decision, and AI's inability to distinguish between the combatants as well as the non-combatants could result in higher civilian casualties because they do not know who is actually, raging the war and who is actually at the receiving side. And this raises moral questions about their use in combat. Next one is unpredictability as well as technical failures are there. Here, autonomous robots may behave unpredictably in in complex battlefield scenarios leading to unintended consequences. For example, in 2007, a South African anti-aircraft robot, this actually malfunctioned and killed around 9 soldiers, showcasing the risk of technical failures in warfare. Next one is cybersecurity risks. Autonomous robots are vulnerable to hacking as well as cyber attacks by the enemy. The fear that the enemy forces could take control to the military robots and turn them against their own forces is a significant concern. Next is, there is a chance of escalation of conflicts. That is, the use of robots may lower the threshold for starting the war since there is less risk to the human soldiers. Okay, so earlier we were actually very fearful of the war because of the human casualties, because of the the impact that it's going to have on human life. But now, since only the machines are going to replace the soldiers, it can become a common affair. Okay, so this could lead to more frequent and prolonged conflicts as warned by the ethicist Alan Wagner. And now, accountability. When autonomous robots make mistakes or cause unintended damage, it raises the question of accountability. Who is responsible for this? So, who is responsible for the robot's action? Whether it is the operator, whether it is the programmer, or is it the military? So, this again becomes a question. So, these are the various challenges associated by including robotics if we actually deploy robotics in military. Now let us see what has been India's progress in military robotics. So first, India is also making strides in military robotics. For example, the DRDO, that is the Defense Research and Development Organization, is actively developing a range of unmanned aerial vehicles as well as the ground vehicles. We have projects such as the Lakshya as well as the Daksh. This demonstrates India's focus on creating autonomous robots for surveillance, for reconnaissance as well as bomb disposal. For example, what is this project Lakshya? It is nothing but a remotely piloted targeted drone system which is developed by the DRDO, and Daksh is nothing but it's an electronically or electrically powered remotely operated vehicle, that is an ROV, to assist the Indian Army in disposal of bombs and other dangerous tasks. And also you have the Netra UAV, that is the unmanned aerial vehicle developed for counter-terrorism operations. This highlights India's advancements in this particular field. Now, let us see what is India's security measures against robotic warfare, which is very important. Any kind of topic you take, what are the measures that India has actually taken becomes very important. First one is the Indrajal system, which is developed by Green Robotics. It is India's first AI-powered anti-drone system. This actually offers a comprehensive protection against various aerial threats. Next one is the CIBMS, that is nothing but the Comprehensive Integrated Border Management System. It uses advanced surveillance technologies in order to protect India's borders from intrusions by the autonomous vehicles and drones. Next one, we have the National Counter Rogue Drones Guidelines of 2019 to deal with the possible security challenges from rogue drones to key installations like nuclear power plants as well as military bases. Now that we've actually looked at both the sides of the coins, we've actually seen where India is, what has been its progress, the regulations or the framework or the regulatory framework India has brought in place in order to control. Next one, we've actually seen the applications, we've seen the advantages as well as the challenges that actually concern the deployment of the robotics in the military warfare or the modern warfare. Now that we need to write a proper, balanced, neutral conclusion that actually, that satisfies the examiner, okay? It should not be inclined. It cannot be extreme. So the conclusion says that the integration of robotics and warfare is inevitable. This actually offers immense potential to enhance the military capabilities. It reduces the human casualties, etc. However, it has ethical, technical and strategic concerns we actually saw, and this must be addressed to ensure responsible use. Also moving forward, the international community needs to establish clear regulations and guidelines for the deployment of autonomous systems in combat, focusing on maintaining the human oversight, ensuring accountability and preventing the misuse. Basically, they're saying that you need to bring a standard model on how operation of autonomous drones and machines actually have to be of each country. For nations like India, investing in both military robotics and counter-robotic systems will be essential to safeguard the national security while contributing to global norms on ethical military technology. The next topic that we've actually taken up for discussion is how to enable transit-oriented development. So this particular topic of transit-oriented development becomes very, very, very important for your urban planning or urbanization for your syllabus. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about transit-oriented planning as well as urban planning and design. And this particular topic can be mapped to the mains examination under GS Paper 1, urbanization, their problems as well as remedies. So we need to understand, rather than understanding, the concept of urbanization and what is the status of India's urbanization, various other dimensions to it, such as the transit-oriented development. And because of urbanization, what is the impact of climate change? What is the impact of urban floods on the economy? So these kind of dimensions and dynamic things you'll have to be ready to take up in the examination. Now moving forward, if you actually see, there has been a previous year question asked in the year 2016 in the UPSC mains examination with respect to that of smart cities. So from here, you will actually, understand that this particular concept of urbanization, smart cities, smart villages, urban sprawl, all this actually becomes very, very important. And recently also in one of our latest videos, we've discussed about the urban-rural continuum and how there has to be an integrated regulatory framework, okay? And that development should not happen in silos for the urban as well as the rural areas. Now moving forward, let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. It talks about the concept of transit-oriented development and its need in the Indian cities, okay? If you basically see, for example, if these are, the roads, or this is an Indian city, there is actually, expansion horizontally that is actually taking place, okay? So due to rapid urbanization, there is further and further expansion of the cities horizontally, and this actually results in farther distance of the home as well as your workplaces, okay? So it is not at a walkable distance. So what happens is that people, for their commuting purposes, they actually resort to buying more private vehicles, because of which there is increased purchase of vehicles, there is more traffic congestion, there is more air pollution and so on. So instead of focusing on this, what we need to, in order to curb this, we need to focus on this particular concept of transit-oriented development, where along these, metro lines as well as the transport corridors, there has to be development of other amenities like workspace as well as, market spaces, etc., which are at a walkable distance. And here it also talks about international examples as well as governance models. So this particular topic becomes very, very important for your mains examination. So let us understand what is transit-oriented development, okay? So TOD, that is transit-oriented development, is an urban planning concept that focuses on creating mixed-use amenities in the high-density areas at a walkable distance from the transportation hubs. So for you to understand in normal terms, you need to develop residential, commercial, that is offices, malls, as well as entertainment spaces nearby the metro stations. Okay, metro stations, either whether it is railways or bus rapid transit system, that is the BRTS, as well as ferry stations. This actually ensures that there is easy accessibility and quality lifestyle to the urban dwellers. Also, this transit-oriented development creates a walkable environment, allowing residents and working populace hassle-free travel to the markets, offices, as well as the neighborhood places. Okay, and it also motivates people to use public transport, thereby controlling vehicular congestion as well as the pollution levels. And also, this has been widely adopted by the metro cities such as Ahmedabad, Mumbai, as well as Delhi. Now, why is there a need for transit-oriented development in Indian cities? Because as you know, India is actually facing, or it is undergoing, a rapid pace of urbanization, accompanied by challenges like unplanned sprawl, there is traffic congestion, pollution, there is over-reliance on private vehicles, etc. Because of this, there is actually a lot of global warming, etc. that's actually taking place. If you look at some of the statistics or some of the data with respect to the India's urbanization, India is urbanizing at a rapid pace, with the urban population rising much faster than the total population itself. Level of urbanization has increased from around 17.29% in 1951, and currently it is actually 31.6 as per the data taken from 2011. And India is competing with the fastest growing countries in the world, and the urban population in India, which is nearly 400 million, is poised to grow to around 600 million by 2030. Okay. And now the urban population of India contributes to around 65% of the country's gross domestic product, that is GDP, which is expected to grow to around 75% in the next 15 years. Okay, so these are some of the things that you need to know so that you can quote in your essay or in your mains examination. Now moving forward, let's continue with the need for the transit-oriented development in Indian cities. Apart from the rapidly, developing urban areas in India, second one is urbanization and infrastructure strain. With over 31.6 of India's population living in the urban areas, cities are actually growing horizontally, that I actually told you in the beginning of this topic, increasing the travel distances and the infrastructure demands. And here, TOD, while introduced, provides a solution by creating compact vertical growth near the transit corridors itself. Second one, sustainable development. India's commitment to low carbon growth requires a focus on sustainable transport solutions. Okay, that is what we have actually focused on, this net neutrality by 2070 and all those things. So we need to focus on this one. And in that case, the TOD, that is transit oriented development, encourages environmentally friendly transportation, contributing to reduced carbon emissions and resource use. Next one, improved public transport efficiency, because the distance or the travel time that you actually take from reaching from your home to the office actually reduces. So this is improved public transport efficiency. Next one is economic and social benefits, that is TOD can help address issues like job accessibility as well as workforce productivity by reducing the travel time and cost we've already discussed. It also has the potential to revitalize the neighborhoods and attract the businesses, enhancing the local economies. Now moving forward, let us actually see what does the National TOD Policy 2017 actually says. The policy was created by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, and it combines the land usage and the transport infrastructure with the intent to create sustainable urban growth centers. And these centers would have walkable and livable communities with mixed land usage policies to sustain a high density of population. That is, in the rapidly urbanizing world or rapidly urbanizing country like India, TOD will actually help you or help develop sustainable urban growth centers, and they will actually be at a walkable and they will be livable communities with mixed land usage policies. Okay, so that is what they are saying. And also the TOD policy defines 12 principles to be implemented in the influence zones, also known as immediate vicinity of the transit stations. Let us see what are the 12 principles. Okay, so here it actually includes the 12 components. First one, there is multimodal integration. Second one, there has to be complete streets. Next, there has to be last mile connectivity. It has to be inclusive. It has to optimize the densities. And then mixed land uses has to be there. Interconnected street network should be there, as well as traffic claiming, NMT network, managed parking, informal sector integration, street-oriented building. All these actually have to be there. And this is what the National TOD Policy of 2017 includes as 12 basic principles. Now, it is important for us to understand a few of the global best practices on TOD. First one, let us actually take the example of Hong Kong, that is high density TOD and integrated transport system. Here if you see, Hong Kong is a global leader in the transit-oriented development where 90% of all motorized trips are made via public transport. Very, very important. And the best practice over here is that the city integrates high density development with its mass transit railway system, that is the MTR system. Housing, commercial spaces and public amenities are connected around these transit hubs, minimizing the need for private vehicle use. What has been the outcome? Hong Kong's TOD has led to 50% increase in per capita gross value added, that is GVA, between 1993 and 2011, while it has also reduced the fuel consumption and carbon emissions per capita by 10%, which is extremely huge, and it has also kept car ownership rates low as 56 cars per 1,000 people. Now moving on, the second example is Copenhagen in Denmark, which actually uses a finger plan. So if you actually see, this is in the form of a finger, right? So let us see what is it. So here, the finger plan of Copenhagen dating back to 1947 is one of the earliest examples of TOD. Here, this plan structures the urban development along 5 fingers. You can see 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And that actually extend out from the city center. Each actually follows a major rail or the transit corridors, and the space between the fingers is actually reserved for the green spaces. So these are actually the spaces which are the green centers. What has been the outcome of this 5-finger plan is that the finger plan has created a sustainable urban sprawl that balances the green spaces and the urban density, providing easy access to the public transport while also controlling the suburban growth. The next article that we'll be discussing about is how Supreme Court has actually strengthened child pornography law. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about how the recent ruling of the Supreme Court has actually strengthened the child pornography law, and it is important for us to understand how the Supreme Court has been interpreting different offences that have been mentioned under the POCSO Act. Here POCSO actually stands for Protection of Children from Sexual Offences. Okay, so this is what POCSO stands for. So as I told you, in this particular article, we'll be discussing about POCSO Act as well as what has been the definition of child under the POCSO Act, as well as the recent ruling of the Supreme Court which has strengthened the law. So this particular topic is very, very important for your mains examination under GS Paper 2, welfare schemes for vulnerable section of the population, where apart from women, children, elderly, all these categories are also important under vulnerable section of the population, and the schemes associated by the center as well as the states and the performance of these schemes, the outcomes, etc., mechanisms, the laws, institutions and bodies which are constituted for the protection and betterment of these vulnerable sections. Okay, so this is very, very important for your examination. Now moving forward, any topic actually has to be taken in the light of the previous year question. So if you see, this particular child, that is National Child Policy, has been asked in one of your examination, that is 2016 mains examination. So here we understand that the legislations with respect to that of vulnerable sections of the population becomes very important for both your prelims as well as mains examination. Now moving forward, let us understand what this particular article is discussing about. Okay, so the Supreme Court recently said that even viewing, possessing and not reporting such content is punishable under the POCSO Act, that is nothing but Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act, regardless of whether it is shared or transmitted further. So it actually says that even viewing child pornographic content is actually considered an offense. Okay, even if you don't circulate it or transmit it, even viewing becomes an offense under the POCSO Act according to the recent interpretation of the Supreme Court. For this, we need to first understand what is this POCSO Act, okay? So this act was actually enacted in the year 2012 as India's first comprehensive law in order to specifically address the sexual abuse of children. Very, very important. And also you need to know, apart from knowing when this particular act was actually enacted, you should know whether India has ratified any international convention on the rights of children, on the rights of refugees, migrants, etc. You need to know, okay? So India has earlier ratified the UN Convention on the Rights of Child in 1992, way before this particular act was actually brought into existence. And this particular UN Convention emphasizes the protection of children against all forms of abuse as well as exploitation. Next, the POCSO Act is actually administered primarily by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, very, very important, with the Ministry of Law and Justice playing a supportive role in the legal administration. So, all these nodal agencies become very, very important. Now, moving forward, if we look at the key provisions of the POCSO Act, first one, definition of a child. So, the Act defines a child as any person below the age of 18 years. Again, very important, okay? And this provision is actually gender neutral, recognizing that both the boys and the girls can be victims of sexual abuse. So, sexual abuse does not only cater to one particular gender of women, but it is gender neutral as it covers both men as well as women, that is boys and girls. Next is special courts. This particular act mandates the establishment of special courts for the speedy trial of the cases under the POCSO Act, and the trials should ideally be completed within 1 year. Time frame is also very, very important. Next one, what does the act talk about? Mandatory reporting is that any person who has knowledge of an offence under the Act must report it to the authorities, and failure to do so is punishable by law, ensuring community involvement in child protection. Next one, regarding the punishment of offences. There were 2019 amendments, that is certain amendments that were actually made to the provisions in the year 2019, and that actually introduced stricter punishments including death penalty for aggravated penetrative sexual assault on a child below the age of 12 years. Moving forward, the next one is no time limit for reporting abuse. So, this particular provision was introduced to the 2019 amendment, and the amendment actually clarified that there is no period of limitation for reporting the child sexual abuse offences. Okay, so if you actually know an offence, that does not mean that immediately you need to report or there is a time frame for it. And also, it actually says making it easier for adult survivors to seek justice. Next one, confidentiality of the victim's identity, which is very, very appreciative of this particular provision. That is, the Act strictly forbids disclosing the identity of the victim in any form of media, protecting the child's privacy as well as, preventing them from further victimization. Now, moving forward, if you look in detail about the recent Supreme Court ruling as well as the interpretation, the Supreme Court has clarified that under the POCSO Act, even viewing or possessing the child pornography, even without sharing or transmitting it, is a punishable offence. And this actually includes constructive possession, where someone can be held liable even without physically holding the material if they have access or control over it. And this particular interpretation aims to enhance the child protection by holding the individuals accountable for not just distributing but for also merely accessing such content. The next article that we'll be discussing about is weighing in on business as usual with China. So this particular article discusses about the relations or the ties that India has with that of China, as well as the concerns we have with respect to that of the border issues, the economic ties, etc. is actually spoken over here. At the same time, it also talks about the alarming or the potential risks of allowing increased Chinese FDI into India. So in this particular article, we'll be discussing about India-China relations as well as the different types of diplomacy, that is the track 1 diplomacy, 2 diplomacy, etc. till track 9. And this particular topic becomes very, very important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination, specifically mapped to GS paper 2, bilateral, regional and global groupings and agreements involving India and or those affecting India's interests. Now moving forward, there has been a previous year question asked in the mains examination in 2009 with respect to that of China using its economic relations and positive trade surplus as tools to develop potential military power status in Asia. That is, China actually acquiring infrastructure of the neighboring countries such as Sri Lanka, etc., has actually been asked in the exam. So, India-China relations, that is India with respect to that of its bordering countries, that is immediate neighbors, extended neighbors, and those of the bilateral relations that India shares with other countries like US as well as Southeast Asia, Russia, etc. becomes very, very important. And also the effect of policies and agreements that are actually signed globally, what does it actually have for India? The implications become even more important for your mains examination. So now let us actually discuss about what this particular article is discussing about. It basically talks about India-China relations, okay? First one, the border issues. That is, despite India and China having some kind of progress in, negotiating on the border ties, India and China have not yet fully resolved the border disputes with continued military presence in the key areas such as the Depsang Plains as well as Demchok. So, location of these areas on your atlas becomes very, very important. Next one, China's economic demands. Here, China seeks better business conditions in India, but it has actually shown no intent to address India's trade deficit or the market access issues. The next one, economic policy debate. The Economic Survey of 2024 had actually suggested that you need to leverage, that is, India has to leverage the Chinese investments in order to boost India's global supply chain participation. But this particular approach faces criticism due to there are potential security risks if we actually leverage Chinese investments in India, and also there are economic dependency. Next one is the strategic risk. So, unchecked Chinese FDI could actually, that is the foreign direct investment into India, if it is actually unchecked, that could threaten India's strategic interest as China aims to dominate critical sectors like, like energy, etc., and strengthen its global economic influence. The next is policy recommendations, okay? So, India should adopt a selective approach, allowing the Chinese investments only in sectors that actually align with the strategic as well as security interests of India. Now moving forward, what is more important for our examination is to understand this kind of what is diplomacy, okay, this particular term, and what are the different types like multi-track diplomacy, track 1 diplomacy, etc. So diplomacy is nothing but it is a practice of managing the international relationship. How do you manage it? Either through dialogue as well as negotiation between the representatives of the state to further a country's interest and also resolve the conflicts peacefully. For example, you will actually hear that India has had negotiation with that of Bangladesh, with that of Pakistan, Russia, etc. in order to resolve the conflicts peacefully. And this is nothing but it is a key instrument of the foreign policy and involves non-violent strategies in order to strengthen a state's position globally. So this is the concept of diplomacy. Through negotiations, you solve the conflict between two countries like India, Pakistan, etc. Now moving forward, let us actually look into the concept of multi-track diplomacy, okay? So it is a comprehensive approach that integrates all the tracks to address complex global issues, recognizing that effective peacemaking and conflict resolution, this actually requires a collaborative effort from multiple stakeholders and the government. That is nothing but in order to maintain peace and in order to resolve conflicts, what do we need? We need a collaborative effort, and this can not only be done by the government but also it has various other stakeholders over here. So that is what we will see. First one is the track 1 diplomacy. This is nothing but official government to government interactions, which is actually generally conducted by the external affairs minister, that is the diplomats, okay, and the state officials in order to negotiate and resolve the conflicts. And one such example is the Shimla Agreement of 1972 between India and Pakistan that was signed by the Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and the President Zulfikar Ali Bhutto is a classic example of official government to government diplomacy that is aimed at resolving conflicts and establishing peace in this particular region. So when it's government to government, it is track 1. What is track 2? This is unofficial and informal engagement by the non-state actors also. Here you have the involvement of the non-governmental organizations like the NGO. You have the academics as well as influential individuals in order to promote dialogue and understanding between the conflicting parties. One such example is the Neem-Rana dialogue between India and Pakistan, which was initiated in the year 1990, involved retired military officials, diplomats as well as academicians from both the countries, and this aimed to build mutual understanding and also reduce the hostilities between two parties. Next one, there is something called track 1.5 diplomacy. This is nothing but a blend of official and unofficial negotiations involving both the government and the non-government representatives. Here the example is the back-channel talks between India and Pakistan in the early 2000s, where we had both the government officials and retired diplomats engaged in the dialogue to reduce tensions and also explore solutions in the Kashmir conflict, that is in the J&K region. Now moving forward is the track 3 diplomacy, okay. So this is nothing but business interactions. This is actually aimed at peace building through economic opportunities and fostering international understanding. And here better example is India's economic cooperation with Bangladesh, including initiatives like the line of credit, that is the LOC, extended to Bangladesh for their infrastructure projects. This actually helps build economic ties and also promote regional stability as well as prosperity for both the sides. Next is track 4 diplomacy. This is nothing but the citizen diplomacy involving individual efforts as well as exchanges in order to foster goodwill and mutual understanding. Example is Aman Ki Asha initiative between India and Pakistan that was launched by the Times of India and the Jang group in Pakistan. This promoted people-to-people contact and cultural exchanges in order to foster this particular idea of goodwill and better mutual understanding. Next comes track 5 diplomacy, where educational and research-focused diplomacy through the academic collaborations and training in conflict resolution. Next is track 6 diplomacy. This is nothing but advocacy and activism addressing global issues such as human rights, environmental protection as well as social justice. Now moving forward, track 7 diplomacy. This involves religious and the faith-based efforts in order to promote peace as well as non-violence. Next is track 8 diplomacy. This is nothing but providing financial support as well as resources from the philanthropists as well as foundations for peace-building activities. And finally is track 9 diplomacy. This is usage of media as well as communication to share public opinion and to promote peace through the information dissemination. Here one of the best examples is India's use of soft power through Bollywood, yoga as well as cultural events to project a positive image globally and strengthen its diplomatic ties with other countries. So these are the different types of diplomacy, and this for the exam per se may not be directly asked in the examination, but this is actually important as you can quote these in your essay paper or in your ethics as well as other papers, okay. The next article that we'll be discussing about is secularism, a European concept introduced during emergency. So this particular statement is a controversial statement that actually hovers around the political dynamics in the state of Tamil Nadu. However, this is not important for our discussion. So our takeaway for the prelims as well as the mains examination is to understand the concept of secularism. When was it introduced in India and whether it was inherent in the constitution before its inclusion by the Amendment Act or not. All these things we'll be actually discussing about. So here we'll be discussing about tenets of Indian secularism, and also it is important for us to understand the emergency as well as associated provisions. So this particular topic is important for both your prelims as well as the mains examination under GS paper 1 secularism and GS paper 2 the amendments in the Indian constitution. Now moving forward, there has been a previous year question asked in the year 2020 in the prelims examination with respect to the basic structure of the constitution. So all these terms such as the basic structure of the constitution, what are the tenets of basic structure, and also different provisions under federalism, secularism, what are fundamental rights, what are the different types of them, as well as what do you mean by democracy, etc. becomes very, very important for your one-liners or the MCQs for the prelims examination, okay. So moving forward, let us actually understand what this particular article is discussing about. So, the Tamil Nadu governor, Mr. R.N. Ravi, had actually stated that secularism is a European concept arising from the conflicts between the church and the monarchy, and he has also stated that Bharat in India being dharma-centric did not have such conflicts. As I already told you, this is actually the news per se. This is not important for the examination. What is important for us is to understand about the concept of Indian secularism as well as various tenets associated to the same. So, Indian secularism is a unique concept compared to Western secularism. How? This reflects the country's diverse cultural, religious as well as social fabric. Okay. So, first let us understand what has been the concept of secularism in India. So, Indian secularism does not mean the absence of religion in public life. Instead, it actually ensures equal respect and treatment for all the religions. Very, very important. And this actually promotes the principle of Sarva Dharma Sambhava, and which means equal respect for all the religions. And if you look at the constitutional provisions which are actually associated with the concept of secularism, the term secular was added to the preamble of the Indian Constitution by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976 during the period of emergency. Here again, this particular Constitutional Amendment Act, the year as well as emergency as well as associated provisions become very, very important for your examination. So, however, the secular nature of the state was implicit in various constitutional provisions even before this particular amendment of 1976 was added to the Constitution. Next is Article 25 to 28 of the Constitution. This actually guarantee the right to freedom of religion, and this includes the freedom to profess, practice and actually propagate any religion and also to manage the religious affairs. Moving forward, state and religion. The Indian state, that is India, maintains a principal distance from all religions. Okay, that is, it neither promotes nor discriminates against any particular religion. And the state can, however, intervene in religious matters whenever necessary in order to ensure that social reforms such as cases related to untouchability, child marriage or gender equality is actually there. Next one, secularism in practice. How in practice is it actually put into? In India, secularism means that the state actively engages with all the religious communities. That's what we said, that the state does not discriminate or it is not inclined towards any particular religion, but it will interfere in order to ensure that there is equality per se. And while ensuring no preferential treatment is given to any single particular religion. So, the Indian model of secularism is often described as a positive model or a neutral model of secularism, where the state supports all the religions equally but actually does not favor any. Now, if you look into certain challenges related to that of Indian secularism, first one is communalism. Of late, if you see, there have been periodic communal tensions and riots as well as, other chaotic things that actually happen between different religions that challenge the secular fabric of the country. Next one, there is also political exploitation. That is, political parties sometimes use religious sentiments in order to gain electoral advantage, which can undermine the secular fabric of India. Next one, there are personal laws. This is, different religious communities in India have their own personal laws governing matters like marriage, divorce, inheritance, etc. And this also raises questions about uniformity as well as maintaining equality. Next one, debate on UCC, that is the Uniform Civil Code. That is, there is an ongoing debate about implementing a UCC in India, which would actually replace these personal laws maintained by different religions with a common set of laws for all the citizens, irrespective of the religion. Proponents actually argue that UCC will strengthen secularism and equality, while the opponents actually see it as an infringement on the religious freedom. So, there again, you cannot actually say there is a secular standard that India maintains. Next one is the role of judiciary. The judiciary in India has played a significant role in interpreting secularism and also upholding the rights of religious minorities. It has also been instrumental in balancing religious practices with that of constitutional values. So, since we've actually discussed about various tenets of India's secularism as well as challenges following the same, as a conclusion, it has to be very neutral. That is, we need to say that Indian secularism, therefore, is a complex and evolving concept that seeks to balance the diverse religious practices of its citizens with the principles of equality, non-discrimination, as well as social justice. Now let us solve few prelims as well as mains practice questions. The first question reads, column A actually includes the type of diplomacy and column B actually has the descriptions. Okay. So here, track 1 diplomacy, this is nothing but it is official interactions between government representatives and diplomats. And if you see track 1.5, this actually includes the combination of government officials and non-official actors in the discussions. The next one is track 2 diplomacy. This is nothing but unofficial dialogue by non-state actors like NGOs as well as academics. And finally, it is track 3 diplomacy, which is nothing but business leaders who engage in economic activities to promote peace. So after analyzing this, we actually come to a conclusion that the right option is 1B, 2C, 3D and 4A. So here, going by the options, A is actually the right answer. Now moving forward, the second question reads, which of the following statements about the POCSO is or are correct? It was enacted as India's first comprehensive law specifically addressing the sexual abuse of children. Yes, this is correct. India has ratified the UN Convention on Rights of Child in 1992, which emphasizes the protection of children against all forms of abuse and exploitation. This is also correct. Since both the statements are correct, the correct answer will be option C. Moving forward, the third question reads, consider the following statements with respect to that of the POCSO Act of 2012. The Act defines a child as any person below the age of 18 years which is gender neutral. Yes, this is correct. Special courts established under the Act are required to complete trials within 2 years. No, this is actually wrong. It is within 1 year only. And the 2019 amendments to the Act removed the limitation period for reporting the child sexual abuse offences. Yes, this is correct. And disclosure of the identity of the victim in media is strictly prohibited under the Act. This is also correct. So, since statements 1, 3 and 4 are correct, the answer will be option B. Now moving forward, the fourth question reads, which of the following statements accurately describe the nature of Indian secularism? The first statement reads, Indian secularism is characterized by a complete separation of religion from the state. No, this is actually wrong. The next one, the term secularism was originally included in the Indian Constitution. This was also wrong because it was introduced after the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976 during the period of emergency. Since both the statements are wrong, so select the correct answer using the code given below. Both are actually wrong, so neither 1 nor 2. So the correct answer will be option D. Moving on, the fifth question reads, with reference to the National Transit-Oriented Development, that is the TOD policy of 2017, consider the following statements. The plan was created by the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways. This is actually wrong. The plan combines the land usage and transport infrastructure with the intent to create sustainable urban growth centers. This is actually correct since only statement 2 is actually correct. The correct answer will be option B. Now moving on to the mains practice question. The question reads, how is robotics expected to transform the nature of modern warfare and what are the associated concerns with the same? So here the approach to this particular question is categorized or it is broken down into 3 parts as usual. That is the introduction, the body as well as the conclusion. In the introduction, first we need to define robotics in warfare and how it's actually growing to be important or how its application has been increasing in the modern military operations. And towards the body, we need to talk about its transformative aspects. That is where we'll discuss the enhancements in the operational efficiency through robotic mules, drones as well as the unmanned aerial vehicles as well as autonomous vehicles, etc. and their roles in surveillance, logistics as well as medical evaluation. Also, the other side of the coin, that is the concerns and the challenges such as the risks of malfunctions, then efficiency of AI in decision making, etc. that shall be discussed. And towards the conclusion, we need to conclude the answer by emphasizing the need for regulations and ethical guidelines in order to balance the benefits of robotics in warfare with the associated risks. So with this, we've actually come to the conclusion of our daily news analysis. For more such videos and updates, please do like, share and subscribe to Narayana IAS Academy YouTube channel. Until then, thank you.